Mira had barely stepped out of the boardroom when the whispers began. Did you hear? The CEO is personally backing her. She must have something on him. Or maybe they're involved. Mira clenched her fists as she walked through the hallway. She had worked hard to get here, yet now people were twisting the truth into something ugly. The rumors spread like wildfire. Some said she was Gu Min's secret lover. Others whispered that she was using her looks to climb the corporate ladder. It didn't matter that she was breaking her back, trying to prove herself. In their eyes, she was just a girl who got lucky. By the end of the day, Mira had had enough. She stormed into Gu Min's office, slamming the door behind her. Are you even aware of what people are saying? Gu Min barely glanced up from his laptop. I am. She stared at him. And you don't care? He finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. Should I? Mira let out a frustrated sigh. They think I'm only here because of you. That I didn't earn this. Gu Min leaned back, his gaze sharp. Then prove them wrong. Mira froze. He continued, his voice calm but firm. Do you think my approval alone is enough? If you let a few rumors shake you, then maybe you don't deserve to be here after all. Mira's breath hitched. He wasn't comforting her. He wasn't defending her. He was challenging her. She gritted her teeth. Fine. I'll prove them wrong. A flicker of something, satisfaction, crossed his face. Good. But rumors weren't the only thing Mira had to deal with. That night, she received an anonymous text. Stay in your place, intern. You don't belong here. Mira's grip tightened around her phone. The office gossip was one thing, but now someone wanted her gone. And she had a feeling this was just the beginning. Mira stared at the message on her phone. Stay in your place, intern. You don't belong here. Her heart pounded, but she refused to let fear take over. Whoever sent this doesn't know me well enough. I don't back down. The next morning, she walked into the office with her head high, determined to prove herself. But as she stepped into the elevator, a familiar voice stopped her. Miss Mira. She turned to see Mr. Lee, the senior manager who had replaced Ms. Choi. His smile was polite, but his eyes were calculating. Join me for a coffee, he said. It wasn't a request. Mira hesitated. She didn't trust him. But something told her this wasn't just a casual invitation. With a nod, she followed him to a quiet cafe near the office. Mr. Lee stirred his coffee slowly. You're quite ambitious, aren't you? Mira met his gaze. I just do my work. He chuckled. No, you do more than that. You caught Ms. Choi, earned the CEO's attention, and now. He leaned forward. You're on a path most people in this company would kill for. Mira said nothing. Mr. Lee sighed, placing a folder on the table. I'll get straight to the point. There are people in the company who don't like you. Powerful people. Mira clenched her fists under the table. And you're one of them? He smirked. No. I just know how the game is played. She eyed the folder. What is this? A solution. His tone was smooth, persuasive. If you sign this transfer request, you'll be placed in a different department. A quieter one. No threats. No rumors. Just peace. Mira's eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? Mr. Lee leaned back. Then you'll have to deal with whatever comes next. Mira exhaled slowly. This was a test. A trap. If she accepted, she would disappear from the main office, away from Gu Min's radar. But if she refused, she glanced at the man across from her. Mr. Lee wasn't acting alone. Someone higher up wanted her out of the way. Mira pushed the folder back toward him. I'm staying where I am. Mr. Lee smiled, but his eyes darkened. Brave choice. He stood up, adjusting his suit. I hope you don't regret it. As he walked away, Mira felt the weight of what she had just done. She had officially made enemies. And now, she had to be ready for whatever came next. The city lights stretched endlessly as Mira walked through the quiet streets of Seoul. The day had been exhausting, but she refused to go home just yet. Her mind was restless. Mr. Lee's threat, the anonymous warning, the constant stares at the office. She had come to Seoul to grow, to prove herself, yet the higher she climbed, the more dangerous it became. Lost in thought, she barely noticed the black luxury car that pulled up beside her until the tinted window rolled down. Mira. Her breath hitched. Gu Min. Even in the dim streetlight, his sharp features were undeniable. He rested an arm on the steering wheel, his eyes locked onto hers. Get in, he said. Mira hesitated. Why? Gu Min arched a brow. Do you always question everything? She did. But there was something about his tone, an unspoken challenge. With a sigh, she opened the door and slid into the seat. The interior of the car smelled like expensive leather and something distinctly him. Clean. Crisp. Unreadable. He didn't speak as he pulled back onto the road, driving smoothly through the city. The silence between them was thick, charged. Finally, Mira broke it. Where are we going? Gu Min's fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. You looked troubled. Mira blinked. And I don't like distractions in my company. She scoffed. So, this is about work? He smirked slightly, but didn't answer. After a while, the car slowed, stopping at a rooftop restaurant with a breathtaking view of Seoul. Mira frowned. This doesn't look like a lecture about work. Gu Min got out, walking ahead without answering. With a huff, she followed. A moment of truth. The rooftop was quiet, away from the noise of the city below. The air was crisp, the lights of Seoul twinkling like a sea of stars. Mira leaned against the railing, taking in the view. I didn't know you enjoyed places like this. Gu Min stood beside her, his expression unreadable. There are a lot of things you don't know about me. Mira turned to face him. Then tell me one thing. His gaze met hers, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. I don't waste my time on people who aren't worth it. Mira's breath caught. He wasn't just talking about work. For the first time, something in his cold exterior cracked, just slightly. And in that moment, under the Seoul night sky, Mira realized she wasn't just drawn to his power, she was drawn to him. Dangerous. Unpredictable. Gu Min was a man she should stay away from. But as his eyes lingered on hers for a second too long, she knew. It was already too late. Mira had always known Gu Min was untouchable. Cold. Ruthless. A man no one dared to offend. But that night on the rooftop, something shifted. She saw it. The brief flicker in his eyes, the hesitation in his movements. For the first time, the untouchable CEO looked human. And that was dangerous. The morning after, Mira tried to shake off the strange tension as she walked into the office the next morning. She had work to do, and whatever happened last night wasn't her problem. But the moment she stepped in, the stares started again. A senior employee whispered, "Did you hear? The CEO was seen with her last night." Mira stiffened. Of course, people would talk. She ignored them and went straight to her desk. She needed to focus. Except, Gu Min wasn't making it easy. Before, he barely looked at her in the office. Now, his sharp gaze followed her during meetings. His voice was calmer when he spoke to her. And when she handed him documents, his fingers brushed against hers for just a second too long. The small gestures were subtle, too subtle for anyone else to notice. But Mira noticed. And she hated how it made her heart race. Later that evening, as Mira was packing up, Mr. Lee approached her desk. You should be careful, he said, his tone low and knowing. Mira narrowed her eyes. Careful of what? Mr. Lee smirked. CEO Gu doesn't let people get close to him. If he's paying attention to you, it's for a reason. And trust me, you won't like what happens next. Mira clenched her fists. If you have something to say, say it. He chuckled. Just don't get comfortable in turn. The higher you climb, the harder the fall. He walked away, leaving Mira with a heavy feeling in her chest. She didn't need Mr. Lee's warning to know that something was changing. She could feel it. Gu Min's ice was cracking. And if she wasn't careful, she might be the one who falls right through.